Hello all, welcome to the Lunar Sea Spire Cartoon Fan Podcast. This is episode 304, and today we'll be talking about the first episode of Adventure Time Distant Lands, BMO. I'm GC13.
And I'm David.
So, BMO becomes the Sheriff of the Drift. I mean, that's a very BMO thing to have happen.
Can't escape from talking about shows with sheriffs. It's a hard thing. It's a big theme in cartoons these days, I guess. Yeah, this is a completely and utterly fascinating thing that has happened, that we are having more Adventure Time and that we're coming back with BMO and that the Adventure Time universe is so much bigger than Earth. And, we've gotten stories in Adventure Time before that took place in space, yet I still think this was a firm departure or a way of saying, you know what? Adventure Time stories can be about literally anything we want them to be. And I think that's really cool and made me think a lot. And then I saw the Adamudo, and there were some other people on there on their AMA on Reddit, and they were talking about, someone asked, oh, Adventure Time, could there be more of that even beyond Distant Lands? And they were like, I mean, sure, why not, And that's how I felt watching this. I just thought, man, there's so much you could do here. And it really feels like there's very little time, and what they fit in is honestly a pretty independent story, and they do try to connect it with, sort of, oh, surprise, it's a prequel story, and oh, surprise, here's a little connection to Earth and humans. But at the same time, they almost felt like not really necessary inclusions, and there's one particularly interesting inclusion, which I'm sure we'll get to, a certain character that's never truly name dropped, but is included in this special that I cannot figure out why they included him in the way they did, but BMO was a lot of things. They really did a lot to pique my interest in such a way that I am able to talk about it in many circles, spinning around many topics. So let's pick one.
I mean, it's just I was talking about this with somebody today, and I summarized it as they were writing it, and they realized that they were writing an Adventure Time episode, and so there'll be sometimes, especially whenever Hugo is talking, they're going to be like, oh yeah, this is an Adventure Time episode.
You like with that
Hugo
lingo?
Just brings that.
Yeah, with that lingo.
And he says it so half-heartedly. It's like, yeah, I'm Hugo. What you gonna do about it?
I mean, I felt that same touch with, what were the crab aliens called? Shield somethings?
I think they were just called the Shells.
Yeah, Shells. He's like, well, the voice of them are ridiculous, but that opening scene with the Shells, they just have a ridiculously casual voice, and, the leader of them is called Carl? Jeff? Some name like that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't remember doing that. Like, again, that was another, very Adventure Time moment.
Yeah, I mean, BMO grounding this episode, obviously BMO's dialogue was as BMO-y as ever in this, but especially because Hugo was a human character, I feel like they almost made it the humans have human lingo, and same thing with Mr. M had all of his let's just say it, his Martini speech and his way of being not really cunning. I don't know if I'd ever describe him as cunning. He's definitely a smart enough jerk.
There is a certain kind of cunning. Yeah, Mr. M was wearing his Martin on his sleeve, I think.
I mean, the M's everywhere, and I just think it's hilarious that the big reveal that they did was that he took off his shoes, and that's supposed to be, for true fans. They can recognize those feet anywhere. that specific reddish skin tone of Martin, but he's so interesting to be included here, because since we see at the end of this episode that it takes place right around when Finn is, very, very young age. I mean, is he 5, 6, 7? But, it's only been 5, 6, or 7 years since the Martin we saw who lost Finn. And I'll never get over how much of a different character Martin was when we saw him, in the Islands miniseries taking care of Finn. And he's already up to his, he was already a little bit of not a little bit. I mean, he was a complete con man then, but he genuinely loved Finn then, and he wasn't a completely irredeemable person. But, here he is in space, and he's already a complete butthead. So I don't
scoundrel.
I want to know why. Why is he such a scoundrel? We totally missed that character development, and you don't always have to see it, but it's just he's a weird character.
It's a harsh, unforgiving universe out there, David.
Yeah, I feel like part of his inclusion here, one, it just, gives you a little something extra as a longtime Adventure Time fan. but also, it just gives us this sense of the scale of the world that, yeah, Martin was just, out in space doing stuff at some point. And, I guess at some point he became a like ultra space criminal to get locked up in the Citadel. So this is, somehow with him getting, thrown off back into space again at the end of this episode, somehow he went from that to committing horrible space crimes.
Well, I think you have to commit a cosmic level crime to get there.
Right, like, what is this guy doing? I feel like he has to show up again in the other Distant Lands episodes, because I just couldn't imagine that this was the last we'd see of him. It already was strange that the last we saw of him was him just, going to another plane of existence in whatever season of Adventure Time that was. And, his story was always, like, written in a very specific way to be like, oh, abusive father shows up, super annoying, and then he's out of there. Just like a very realistic depiction of just a terrible, not abusive, abandoning father.
Just a terrible human being.
Right. And so to have him back one more time, just seeing him being, relatively despicable and selfish, I don't know. It's a very interesting layer on this otherwise not greatly layered story. I don't know. BMO never has too much going on.
I mean, I'll tell you this. Martin signed on with the right, I guess he's a gray elf now. Hugo is utterly amoral, but I just keep thinking to his little, hey, you guys were okay with what I was doing back when you thought there was something in it for you. But the accusation of hypocrisy doesn't work because they had no idea what he was actually doing.
Well, and they thought it was saving everyone. So, no, it didn't seem like people were acting selfishly. It kind of seemed like everybody thought everyone was working for the greater good.
Yeah, they didn't realize that he was the one destroying the pods, and they figured, oh, the pods are being destroyed. We better help this guy help us.
Yeah.
So it was more he tricked them and then acted like they knew what he was doing the whole time. No, Hugo, they're just dum-dums.
And the craziest thing is that Hugo's character didn't need that much, and yet they gave him a little moment at the end to be back with Olive, the little service droid. And I just don't know why. Like, did he need a happy ending? But he even kind of got one.
It's one of those bittersweet kind of deals.
Well, for him, I don't know if the audience cares about his fate or not. But yeah, that's where I wonder, like, was there supposed to be more to Hugo? Like, I don't empathize with him just because he was a human. Like, he's just, standard dirtbag.
I think it's more that there's hope even for the likes of him. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, as long as you're not Martin, there's still some hope. Speaking of too much hope, so I know we haven't really talked about the core of the episode yet, but I'm just going to keep avoiding that. And let's just talk about Y5's parents for a second, since we're talking about bad people.
The original deadbeat parents to get told off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that little line that Martin says to them about,
he can tell the future.
Yeah, about them being the deadbeat parents. I'm like, wow, that's some foreshadowing there. It almost made it feel like post, even though this is a prequel thing, it sounded more like he was being self-recognizing of his abandonment. But anyway, Y5's parents are bad, or at least, her parents, or her dad doesn't talk much, but her mom does, and she's a jerk until the one thing she says at the end. But we show, the family getting back together, and I think, there was a lot of discourse in the She-Ra fandom talking about Shadow Weaver, and, can your abusive mom ever really be redeemed or not? And I think there's just been so many better depictions in like, cartoons that when we get something like this, it feels like kind of wrong. Like, I know it's just a one-off episode, and so, we'll probably never see Y5 again, much like, sadly, I don't think BMO ever will. BMO, says, oh, I can't wait to see Y5 the next time. Maybe she'll be mayor. And we know that BMO probably stays on Earth for 1,000 years. Anyway, yeah, Y5's mom didn't deserve a hug. She was a jerk. She only deserved to be called out. And maybe it was a genuine apology at the end, but I don't know. I feel like we didn't really need that arc for her parents because there just wasn't enough there. Like, we only saw her be bad and not listening to her kid. And then only at the end, when it was very clearly spelled out that she was wrong, did she say, please love me? So I don't know about that.
I mean, I'm going to say this. She's nowhere near the level of Shadow Weaver. I think she's just one of those authoritarian-style parents, which is, some people would call it abuse, some people would just call it not sparing the rod. I don't like those people very much, but hey.
It's a little worse than authoritarian, though, because not only is she telling, well, Wi-Fi what to do, no matter what, don't question me, but she also makes Wi-Fi feel a little worthless, so it's a bonus. There's multiple levels of bad parenting. It's not just listen to me and never question me. It's also, you disappoint me. So that's kind of the whole package. I mean, the only thing extra Shadow Weaver added on was probably, well, was she even physically abusive? It was all emotional.
Ketra makes it pretty clear that Shadow Weaver was physically abusive.
Yeah. So, look, Shadow Weaver's, worse. It's in the name, Shadow Weaver, but still, Wi-Fi's parents are bad. That's the forward note.
They're definitely not the parents I would choose.
Yeah.
I think Ricky is the standout star of the episode. What do you think?
I miss Ricky already. I love that Y5 calls Ricky after BMO names him. I liked the moment just that, this little weird space octopus farmer dude wanted to get back his little, what are those horrible little creatures called?
Space lard.
Lard, that's the key word. He wanted his lard back, but it was just to eat him. And that was hilarious. But also, I really feel like I haven't watched Adventure Time in a long time because I know we've seen space lards before in some capacity, and I don't remember where anymore.
I think they're called sea lards in Adventure Time.
Oh, they live but do they live in the sea, or are they just called sea lards and they're somewhere else? Which would be a very Adventure Time thing.
I can't remember what the episode is, but they're having a party. I think this is the one where the Ice King is mad he didn't get invited, and Finn wins a sea lard, and Jake mocks him for it.
Yep, sea lards. Well, and then we find out, I don't know if a sea lard ever talked in the regular runtime Adventure Time, but this one does, and his name is, I should have written that one down. Twinkle Toes. Yeah.
I mean, I just love BMO just going on a tear naming things. Also, his name's Ricky!
Yeah, and yet we find out that also BMO thinks that, he named himself. Not the case. It's printed on your side, BMO. Sorry.
I mean, where do you think he got the inspiration from?
That's right. I do find BMO's reason to be in space interesting. I guess, terraforming Mars, but we already know Mars was an active place with beans on it. I don't particularly know why BMO had to be sent to plant potatoes there.
I think I know why.
Why?
Did the Martians have a flag?
Did the Martians have a flag? It doesn't have a potato on it.
Probably not. If they don't have a flag, they need to be colonized.
No. Mo is not the colonizing type. I don't think Mo is.
Yeah, that's more Hugo's job description.
Yeah, Mo seems like the guy that he just takes care of his robots until he dies. So I was surprised, I guess he took an active role in the world, though. He wanted his robots, he cared about, I guess, humanity too, because he wanted his robots to have relationships with humans. So maybe he played a part in the apocalypse or the post-apocalyptic times, but yeah, it's just weird. Also, even in the beginning, as BMO's flying a spaceship, there's other spaceships and stuff flying past. It is so interesting how Adventure Time is supposed to be this world just full of life. Yeah, I mean, were those humans? Was it just other things? But I love that the premise for Adventure Time is that, humans messed up and blew up their world and everything died and everything came back as magic. But it turns out there was a whole universe of life going on the whole rest of the time, and people don't even know about Earth. It's not even relevant. So it's just fascinating because Ooh always felt just so big and diverse, but it turns out it was never even really important, which I just love that, Adventure Time fans probably thought it was really interesting when they even found out that Ooh used to be Earth and there were people on it. And as humans, we find that interesting. But then the thing is, the rest of the universe exists and it doesn't care about the connection to humans or magic. It's no, the rest of the universe is just as interesting, or more so.
I just want to know, did BMO get lost on the way to Mars? Because I feel like he was passing by a lot of stuff you wouldn't find in between the Earth and Martian orbits.
The thing about Adventure Time's world is when I was watching it in its initial run, and, you first see the episode where, watching the tapes about Simon, you think, oh, their world was exactly our world. But by the time you get to, the Elements miniseries, or, well, even before that, you learn about, the early history of Earth with magic and stuff, and one of the elementals shoots candy out of their hands with a fart sound. Like, that's not our world. So there's like, at first you're like, oh, and maybe it's supposed to be like this. I mean, clearly our world doesn't actually have magic in it, so whatever. So it's already an alternate world anyway, but it's a little more alternate. So I could accept that lots of things are alternate, including the layout of the solar system or anything else. But I feel like at one point the vision of Adventure Time was more like, no, it's like literally Earth and then it transforms. But they've expanded it so much that it feels much more alt than it did before. So yeah.
And then I also feel like there's one shot where you can see the drift from where BMO is, but we know that the drift is nowhere near Earth because the stars are all in the wrong places. So
yeah, it must be another ship.
There must be another alien space station in our solar system, which
I mean, why not?
Would be kind of cool, actually.
And well, it's not like this one group of humans that we saw escape in this episode, movie, whatever you want to call it, was the only one that escaped. I mean, there could be plenty of different groups of humans, and I also really like the angle that it's much like Susan Strong, where there's just this idea that humans just branched and mutated into all sorts of things. It kind of reminds me of, I feel like that was a theme in Doctor Who, too, of like humans in the far future all become different species and stuff. Well, actually, that's definitely a theme, because now I'm remembering Moisturize Me, who really likes being the last pure human, but...
yeah. But I think they're all interbred, not that those were humans to begin with.
Right.
Like, there's an episode where a woman has literal kittens because she has a cat boy husband.
Well, yeah. We won't worry about the genetic systems of the universe of Doctor Who, but I like that Adventure Time takes the same sort of note in their sci-fi flavorings, and they have this idea that humans just became anything else but humans. Although, obviously, that's not necessarily the case, because there was an island of humans that did just fine for, 1,000 years after the Great War, the Great Mushroom War. But yeah.
I watched this whole thing the first time I watched it, and it wasn't until the very end when Bima was talking about going back to visit Y5 that I realized, oh, that was a girl the whole time?
They're doing, that's the funny thing, is that they're like cartoon characters aren't heavily gendered anymore. And like, if you don't hear the personal pronoun a bunch, it's not like hammered into your head like Y5 is, specifically a little girl, right? Like, it's a bunny named Y5. Oh, happens to be she. You may decide whether or not the voice sounds like a young girl or young boy, but they're not like, trying to make anything super obvious, right? Like, it's a bunny with eyes, they didn't put they didn't put big old lipstick or anything, and it's not like it's really relevant in this episode. So I just enjoy that. I enjoy the bunny characters in general. I like how BMO points out that, that one owns a shop or a gas station or a hotel. Yeah, they're running a hotel.
He runs a hotel, yes.
Yeah, that was great.
BMO was just so excited to see all of the bunny people.
Yeah. But I don't know. I've been watching a lot of Summer Camp Island, so the idea of gender in cartoons has been on my mind. So I do think that's an interesting topic.
Yeah. Took me a little while to realize Pepper was a boy, so.
Yeah, which I like that it's just like, if kids don't feel like particularly strongly gendered, like, boom, there you go. And cartoons, it's just about like, yeah, I'm just a bunny kid, I like these characters.
Who's going to be mayor one day?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure BMO took on the role of sheriff pretty fast. I feel like with very little demonstrated leadership, right? Like, BMO's face was broadcasted across this whole space station just by himself proclaiming himself being the sheriff. So I feel like Y5 gave one speech. Sure, make her mayor. Like, it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, Hugo was acting completely selfishly the whole time, and he was the genius inventor who was going to save them all. I don't think there's a very high bar for leadership in the Drift. I think everybody's mostly self-interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the character that is the title of this thing. BMO. BMO is a character that
runs towards the screaming.
BMO is meant somewhat for comedy, somewhat for this weird exploration of, not weird, sci-fi always explores, robots. Are they life? Are they not? Themes of that come up again in this episode as Y5's parents treat BMO just like spare parts, and, but then at the same time we see BMO die and deal with death, but it's not that deep, but it sure played. That's the thing with BMO. Like, sometimes Adventure Time tries to go deep, and this has happened before with BMO too, but they always play it from this, like, it's like BMO is, we're supposed to always think of BMO as a child, even though BMO is obviously very old in years of experience. But, you know, like, BMO is always childlike, and we see what it's like for a child to think about themselves dying. It's very all hard to parse, and sometimes it feels like Adventure Time purposely sets up these scenarios where they're like, oh, try to parse it, but actually there's not that much there. So it's like, we're tricking you into thinking there is. But it's the same thing with football. The fact that
faux depth.
Like, well, yeah, but it's not like necessarily cheap. It's like Adventure Time hits this part of my brain that's like, we know what artsiness looks like, and we are playing with that concept in a knowing way. But football too, in this, the fact that we see football again, which that character was always an enigma to me, and it still remains that way, because I understand that football is a part of BMO, but it always feels like something's supposed to come of it, and it never does. It's just that BMO talks to himself, I guess. And that just continued to be carried out here, and it wasn't like fleshed out in any new way. It's like, yeah, that's a thing BMO does. I don't know.
Yeah, they actually had one bit there, right there at the door after Mr. M backstabs BMO, or I guess front stabs, really. It kind of looked like they were showing that it was just BMO saying both sides of the conversation, but I might have missed that. It happens very quickly.
Well, they did have the shot where it's not showing the reflection, at least. It's just showing BMO crying into an empty panel, which could be suggestive of it. But they've always done a pretty solid job of always making you question, like, is football just straight up, you know, his own entity inside of BMO somehow? But it turns out BMO actually has a full collection, full colorful collection of BMOs inside his psyche. So, you know, I'm not even sure what to make of that.
They only come out when BMO's dying.
Not gonna lie, even though, you know, rainbow colors they're just part of the color spectrum, and it shouldn't be a reference to anything, but it felt so Undertale-y for people who've played Undertale. Just seeing those characters in a circle with those specific colors near death. It just felt like, I was like, are they gonna resurrect the BMO somehow, or are they gonna break out of the barrier? I don't know. I don't know why it made me think of that. It shouldn't. It's just a rainbow.
BMO refused.
Well, he's full of determination, isn't he?
I mean, that's all he's got. And a magical service drone that can turn into a cowboy hat or a sheriff's badge.
Yeah. They didn't do too much with that service drone, though, which I guess they didn't need to. It was just, again, that choice, I don't know. They needed just an extra little companion. It's just a fun Adventure Time-y touch. But it didn't need, you know, we didn't need another third tragic backstory in this thing, I guess, to be like, and this is the service drone's consciousness. Like, no, it's just a simple robot.
Aww.
But why did it find BMO so significant again? Like, how did it actually recognize that?
I don't know. I'm thinking that it keyed in on the heart.
Well, like, it recognized Mo's work, I guess, like Moko, but it just seemed like it went deeper initially, and it didn't. It just happened to recognize it.
When it scanned BMO, it showed the heart and some other storage compartment. So I'm assuming what I always got out of that shot was that it was keying in on BMO having a heart. And so it's like, hey, I need to bring you here to fix this. That's what I got.
Oh, you think it didn't identify it as like a high piece of technology? You mean he literally has a heart? Oh, that's cute. I like that. It's like, oh, here's someone who will actually care about our world. You know, and that's funny that's part of BMO's character. As soon as he shows up, he's like, your little world needs saving, right?
Well, he declares that he's going to save it, then clarifies, you do need me to save you guys, right? Yes. I loved that.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of things from the trailer, I just want to point out that no, they did not light a firecracker on Y5's butt.
It did sound less like Wi-Fi was trying to say the ass word during the actual episode. I think they played it up a little with the timing in the trailer somehow. I don't know. Oh, also, quelled fear. For some reason in the trailer, I thought the audio was off. The audio sounded fine when I watched it, so there was no weird shenanigans with how the voice actor sounds. I will say, though, that the music was wildly subdued for an Adventure Time episode. And Adventure Time's always had just sometimes atmospheric music that just sounds a little, wonky, digital. That's my brilliant assessment of the genre of Adventure Time background music, wonky, digital. But it was like super subdued in this episode. I thought that there were definitely some scenes that felt a little too Adventure Timey to me, where the music was just so subdued. I don't even know a better word. It was just like literally quiet and not that strong during some scenes that are, quote, like dramatic or just, the space station's crumbling apart or something, and the music's just not kicking in. And it doesn't have to be like, strings and the cello making me feel sad. It's not like that. It's just like, normally music gets literally louder when action is happening. And they kind of chose to not do that, which, I don't know. Is it Adventure Timey? But it felt a little too far in that direction to me. I don't know.
I want to know what was up with that pod that they had. Like, they had a literal firmament in that pod where the firework was set off, because they had the big bubble holding the water and all the sea creatures out. And it's like, how was that designed?
There's a lot of things mysterious about this floating space station thing. They honestly, like Y5 said it was ancient, but they didn't quite give off the vibe that there was a previous, civilization that had made it or whatever. It's just kind of like had a bunch of weird stuff going on, and none of the species that were there were indigenous to it, right? They'd all seemingly stumbled upon this place. So who knows what the justification or even the logic behind that that bubble was, or any of those creatures.
And we'll never find out.
Well, who knows? I think there's a world where we do get a bunch more Adventure Time content, and I'll regret all the bad things I ever said about AT&T, because they're giving me the things that I want by funding this, this more expensive than normal streaming subscription.
Oh, but David, it has all those movies that you don't want to watch.
I mean, here's the thing. When it comes to like cartoons, there's so much because there's the whole Cartoon Network library on HBO Max. And I'm like, this is great.
Except for it doesn't have the Steven Universe movie or Steven Universe feature. And I'm certain if there were other things I wanted to watch, I would know that they weren't there either.
Right. There's still these weird exclusions. And then when it comes to the non-cartoon world, I mean, I don't know. I was watching Barry on HBO before. I'm still waiting for season 3, but there's not like, it's not as big of a library. It never was. So I don't know what HBO Max's future is. But anyway, I do feel like there's pieces of this episode that I don't want to lose track of, though. Like, is this it for BMO? I mean, surely we'll see BMO again in at least the Finn and Jake episode, right? Like, they can't just not have BMO there. And
I don't know. They might focus on their relationship, though.
Right. I mean, BMO might just be like in the background for a sec, because maybe if it starts in the treehouse, right? And it's just like, bye, BMO.
BMO better have a sheriff badge if it's just a background shot.
There's just this weirdness to like the series ended and you go, yep, that's all I'll ever see of the characters, what existed. But now that there's new stuff, you're just like, I don't know. It might not ever end.
I want to see everything all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's just, I mean, I don't know. I've kind of had my fill of BMO, but I like Martin. Martin's an interesting character, and they purposefully limited it.
I'm just happy Peppermint Butler is getting an episode. Oh. That's what excites me.
That's the most important tertiary character they could have picked, right? That's the top of the heap. Well, it depends on who you consider a tertiary character, but he's the best, maybe besides.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet Pea, though? I don't know. Sweet Pea series? What could Sweet Pea get into?
No. Giuseppe needs to get his own series.
Oh, well, I'm surprised they're not doing Magic Man. That would be also one you could do.
No, he couldn't carry the series by himself. He'd have to make the series about just some person who he decides to attach himself to.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in the Adventure Time world. They could do a whole series just during the regular people times. Like, I don't know. They're just...
set a series on Mars, for crying out loud.
Yes, Mars is super interesting. I mean, that was like part
Abraham
of the pilot.
There.
Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. Just, you could do an 8-part miniseries just with Abraham Lincoln. That's the best part, is that he's a part of the canon of Adventure Time. You could just do a whole adventure. How did we never have an 11-minute episode of Adventure Time where Abraham Lincoln was just doing something,
trying to make an omelet, but every recipe he looks up online doesn't work on his skillet for some reason because it's a Martian skillet.
That's very well suited to a story in Mars, maybe. Not, so I don't know if it's specifically well suited to the the life lived by Abraham Lincoln, but did he like omelets? Is this
a man's got to make his omelet.
I actually, is omelet a thing of the past? When did omelets in America become a thing? Like, were you in the time of the 16th president? Were you like, let's eat an omelet?
It's an alternate history.
Is that that's true. It isn't. Maybe they had omelets.
Anyway, guys, that's been us on BMO. We're looking forward to the rest of Adventure Time Distant Lands. Whenever that comes out, am I right? Join us next week. Until then, I'm GC13.
And I'm David. Don't forget to leave us a review anywhere.
Later, everybody. Our opening and closing music is by Mark Soto. For more cartoon-related content, please visit lunarceasefire.com.